So in this first scenario, I'm actually going to be trying to check to see if my browser will support the aspect ratio rule. And if it does, then I'm going to use the aspect ratio rule. So I'm just going to come in here and say @supports, which is how we get our supports rule. And then we're going to say what it is we're checking for, which is the aspect ratio. And we have to give it a complete rule to check for here. So not just the selector, sorry, not just the style we're changing. So aspect ratio 1:1, which should make it square, but we're now checking to see whether that will work. If it is available within the browser, if the browser does understand aspect ratio, then we need to apply it to something. So I'm going to say div, and then I'm going to say aspect ratio should be 1:1. And it works because my browser, Chrome, actually does support the aspect ratio. However, if it didn't support this, what would happen is our browser would read the CSS, it would get to here, and it would say, okay, I don't understand this doesn't mean anything to me, and it would ignore everything within this @supports section. And a question that often gets asked is, what if your browser doesn't understand @supports? Well, if your browser doesn't understand @supports, then it will ignore that again. It will ignore the @supports rule completely, and it will move on to whatever comes next. But we can do more than just edit the rule we're checking for. So we are checking to see whether aspect ratio is valid, and in this case it is. Our browser accepts it. But we can do other things now. So because it accepts the aspect ratio, maybe I want to add a border of 1 pixel solid red. Let's make that a bit wider. And we can style anything based on whether this original rule is available. Now, something else I like to do is we have some very new pseudo selectors in CSS, which I would like to check for. And this works a little bit differently, but very similarly. And what we do, I'm just going to remove this. And instead of @supports, we're going to use @supports, and then we're going to say space, and then selector, and then we're going to say what we're checking for. And in this case, I'm going to be checking for the has selector to see if that is supported. But again, we have to say what we're checking for within the has. We have to give it a full rule or a full declaration to check for. And we're going to say selector has, and if it has a h1, it'll support that. So now I can say div has h1, and then I'm going to change the background color to pink, because why not? And because my browser supports the has selector, then these rules get applied. But again, if it didn't support it, none of this would be applied. It would just apply any other rules that have been declared elsewhere. It would ignore this completely. And of course, if the supports rule isn't available within the browser, the whole thing gets ignored and things still run smoothly. And just to demonstrate that, this is the same thing. I've opened this up in Firefox, and as you can see, we have the same code. We've had a supports rule that says background color should be pink, but it does not apply. That's because Firefox itself does not currently support, by default, the has rule. Now, if you want to do some serious research and see exactly what you can use and in what browsers, then there is a really great website called caniuse.com. And if you go to caniuse.com, you'll see something that looks a little like this, and all you have to do is come up here and type in what it is you're looking for. So in this case, I'm going to say, can I use aspect ratio? And I get this lovely chart that pops up telling me just how compatible that is with browsers. And we get a really good idea. I can go and check something like has, and we, again, Chrome, Edge, Safari, all supporting this. Several browsers still struggling to keep up. So if you're ever stuck and you ever think, I don't know whether this is going to work, or you know that something isn't fully compatible, you now know how to make sure that there is a fallback, you know how to make sure that it only tries to add those styles where they are relevant, and you can style things differently dependent on whether that actual rule is supported or not.